Thank you for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I'm here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Our special guest today is the Honorable Perrin Beatty, a former parliamentarian and cabinet minister who now has been president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce for the past 16 years. Welcome to the program, Perrin.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
I guess just for the benefit of, thank you for being here, and just for the benefit of our audience, maybe start by describing what the Canadian Chamber is and what it does.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. The Canadian Chamber is the largest business association in Canada. Our network involves over 400 chambers of commerce and boards of trade right across the country. So in virtually any community across Canada, there's a local chamber of commerce or board of trade. And through those, we represent about 200,000 members through the network. As a result, then, what it does is to bring together businesses of all sizes, large, small, every sector, every region of the country, so that we can interact with government and offer our best advice in terms of what the best policies are to encourage economic growth and prosperity in the country.
Oh, perfect. And would you, understanding that you are an advocacy organization as well as a fount of information, I guess, for decision makers, what are your top issues of concern right now?
Tony, everything comes down to growth. That's the prism through which we would look at any initiative taken by government. We need to find a way in Canada of restoring economic growth and creating prosperity for Canadians. What's so disconcerting for us today is that we've been seeing growth actually slipping. We shrunk slightly. The Canadian economy shrunk slightly in the second quarter of the year. But beyond that, our GDP per capita has actually been declining as opposed to growing. And that bodes ill. All of us as parents want our children to inherit something where the prospects are better even than for our generation, for a better standard of life. And unfortunately, Canada's been moving in the other direction. So everything we're looking at, immigration, skills, infrastructure, taxation, regulatory reform, trade policy, all of this we would look at through the prism of what does this mean in terms of economic growth and opportunity for Canadians.
I think that's a really interesting point because, and again, I'm just analyzing, I'm not judging, but a lot of our GDP growth is happening because the number of people who are contributing to GDP because of immigration, let's say, increases every year, sometimes substantially. Thank goodness they do. But if you look at it, as you are saying, per capita, per individual, we're having this decline. That's the area of concern.
And that's the meaningful measurement that we need to look at. If we're asking ourselves, what does all this mean for the average Canadian family? The question is, are we relatively better off or relatively worse off? And you and I both believe that immigration is an important source of strength for Canada. But the difficulty is that if we look at growth that is lower than the rate of immigration coming to the country, what we're seeing is that our productivity and our capacity to generate economic activity per person in Canada is actually declining. And the figures get masked when you roll them all into, well, the GDP overall has grown. Well, it's grown because when you bring more people in, there's more economic activity. The meaningful criterion that we should be looking at is on the basis of each citizen, what is our output and what is our productivity as a country? Are we doing better or worse? Unfortunately, we've been doing worse.
Let's just talk about productivity for a second. When I was industry minister, obviously this is almost a generation ago now, but we were fixated on productivity. It just seems to be a constant concern for the Canadian economy. What's your assessment of this?
It is, and it's a major problem. There are two bases of comparison, I guess we should look at. The first is relative to our trading competitors. How are we doing? And we're slipping down the list year after year and falling lower. They're improving their productivity much more rapidly than we are. The second, and you'll share the same perspective, I'm sure, is that this is the most fortunate country anywhere in the world. If we look at ourselves relative to our potential as a nation, resource-rich, well-educated, a peaceful society, one that is multicultural in nature, one that's next door to the world's richest market, the potential for Canada is unbounded, but we're falling way short of that potential.
Right.
And there's no reason why we have to do that.
We're speaking with Perrin Beatty, president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back with our guest after that. Please stay with us.